Hey everybody, it's Lynn from A Bit of Birdsong. I have a journal that I'm listing right now. It is called the Bohemian Flower Girl, and I will show you why. I didn't attach any kind of permanent closure to the journal, but it's got this really beautiful ribbon made in France, and it's got a pretty sort of purple green color. It's kind of like shark skin. When you turn it in the light, you see those different colors. I was experimenting today with tassels, and I came up with another easy way to make a tassel. I will try to do a tutorial for that in the next couple of days. Very easy, and I think it's so pretty. There are a lot of just shabby pieces of lace and ribbon and scraps, and of course I had to tie a beautiful key in and also a little found object from the parking lot. So while this is not big or flashy, I think you do notice it. You know, it's just a tiny little addition to the tassel that makes a difference. There's a tag here. It's got my stamp on the back, the Bohemian Flower Girl. There's one of the vintage velvet leaves and some lace on that. And then on the front, this is an image that I printed on fabric. I love this. It's something I designed, I don't even remember, maybe 2 years ago. I think it might have been in, I don't know, I'm not gonna try to guess. I had it in one of the journals. I love the way it turned out. It's a really old photograph that I purchased, and then I scanned it and I took a PNG. It was a photograph that then the background was taken out and it was just put over the top of the old picture. There is a little flower that's stitched on the front, and you can see the layers of lace and the doily there. So getting inside, the reason I'm calling it the Bohemian Flower Girl, it's a little bit on the mystical side as far as starting out with this picture on the front, and it's got the dark thread that is sewing everything into place, and there are some elements that feel really bohemian to me, but there are a lot of flowers in here. So right in the front, you can see the stitching where I did the cover. I love that. You can also, if you want to glue something over that or just keep something in front of it, here is a piece of my handmade paper, and I've got to get my station set up for that again. I kind of lost it when I tore apart the workshop to clean out. And this is a really pretty page from the Mother Goose book that I took apart recently and sent out a lot of those pages in the fun kits. There's an old package with 3 buttons on there. Looks pretty old. That's on with a safety pin. There is a pretty book page. It's like a hat. I think it's called the Hat Shop. And you can see that she is making a hat. A piece of lace there. There's just a pretty little piece of paper there. It might be a note card, but I think it's just, no, it is. It's a very thin paper. Very delicate. And that is some old music. I reinforced the center with some masking tape. Here's a little flip out page, and I love that image. You could write on that. Stamped face there, and some beautiful wallpaper. And then on this page we have some wrapping paper that's got all the old pocket watches, and this is, I think it was called was it the Bohemian Ballerina or something like that? I think that's from the Graphics Fairy. And then we have this page from Mother Goose with the geese. Pretty postcard there with the lady by the seashore. That's Renoir. I was going to say the pretty lady by the sea. And there's part of an old book page, some music paper, wallpaper, and then there is a little illustration by Kate Greenaway glued onto that page. Of course, this is one of the stamped images. It's a little bit messy. There's some distressing. I do like that look. And then this is a picture that I bought from a digital kit a few years back. This is a really old print that was, I think it was attached to a page in a scrapbook. And I went ahead and glued a book page onto this side to reinforce it a little bit. The center is reinforced with some masking tape, but just absolutely beautiful. Look at the poppies. Such a beautiful painting. And then there's a book page that's been distressed. You can see the flowers here, and then it looks like a christening gown hanging on a hanger there. And here's some more beautiful wallpaper. You can see the bird cage, and then there's a card with some birds there. There's just a little stamped flower, and there is a paper doily that's been stained and distressed. Another beautiful book page with a lot of roses. It's been distressed. This is just a little dictionary page that's folded in half. Love the botanical image there, and that's there with a paper clip. And a really faint stamp there. Here's some more beautiful wallpaper. And then here, just paper clipped into place, there is a beautiful vintage piece of wallpaper. T for Teddy collection, Anna French, pinstripe. It's got the best feel to it. And then I just printed that out. That is an image by one of my favorite artists, Bouguereau, I think is the way you say his name. This is here, that's a piece of wallpaper to cover up the flap on this envelope because it had an address on it, but it wasn't a pretty old handwritten address. It was more like a stamped business address. And it was green, and I didn't want it there, so I covered it. But then in the envelope, you can put things on this side. And there's a beautiful old picture of two little children in front of a very old car. It says Johnny 5 months, Sandra 4 years. So you Sandras out there, Sandra's my first name as well. And it's a pretty old name. So this is a page from a book of roses. I thought I had gotten rid of all of these by making journals and doing packs and kits, but when I cleaned out, I found a couple more of these. There's a piece of lace on the pocket that I created, and then there's just one of those beautiful Cavallini paper postcards. More wallpaper, and there is of course space for you to continue working, stamping, gluing things in. Here is a pretty old ad of a glass bottle. I just printed that out, and there's a butterfly stamp. So I think this is fun. This was a calendar page that was just full of roses, and I folded the page in half to make a large pocket. You can see where it's paper taped to another page to make a journal page. And then that is one of the little pieces of art that I did when I was practicing faces. So I printed that out, and I just put it in that pocket. And there's a little vintage piece of trim there. More space for you to work. This is an old trifold piece of stationery, a little note card. It's got the teddy bears. This is from the 80s. And those of you who are my age would definitely remember the teddy bears being so popular in the 80s. Victorian magazine hit the scene. I mean, that was a beautiful magazine, and that was really the style for a while. I don't know how many of you remember when the Limited had the clothing line called Outback Red. I came across a blouse the other day from Outback Red, and I almost bought it, but I thought it would be too small, and it was plaid. It wasn't something that I would cut down and use, but it was in perfect condition. I probably could have bought it and then sold it in the shop, but I thought I'm just gonna leave it for somebody who can buy it and wear it. So there's a vintage piece of lace, and just a little envelope there to put things in. Here's more of the wallpaper, and that's just a pretty little piece of stationery with the bird at the top and the little nest. And then right here in the center is a piece of scrapbook paper. I love the little dress forms, the receipt. So you can glue on top of this, you can journal on the back, whatever you want to do with that. There's another one of the Cavallini postcards. These are gorgeous cards. And then we have another one of those book pages with the roses. I love these, and they're really pretty, you know, distressed a little bit, even though they're a bit glossy. So this is a tiny little cutout. I don't know where the whole sheet is at the moment, but I know you've seen them where there are all these little cutouts, and they're mostly cut, but they're attached with just these little pieces. They're pretty easy to cut out, but I thought that bird would be pretty sitting at the top of the stitching, because, you know, sometimes when stitching goes through paper, it can be just a little bit unsightly. I still love to do it, but I may start doing a bit more of that. You know, taking pretty little images like that and gluing them over part of the stitching. So there is another page from the Mother Goose book, and this one really pulled at my heartstrings. So my youngest son is named John, and He was my third son. I was busy all the time, and he rode in a backpack so much of the time because I was busy cleaning, I was busy working, I had a garden, I had 2 other boys to take care of, and John, he was the best baby. He would sit in that backpack, and I think I became really strong carrying him around like that. But it says, right away, Johnny shall ride. And I just love that image. It made me think about my baby John. Of course, John was my only really dark-headed boy. He took after me. His 2 older brothers have blonde hair. And then there's another image from that. And then just a blank space for you to work. There's more of that beautiful wallpaper. And there's just a little blank card that you can write on, and a pocket there with some lace at the top. This side, as you can see, is mostly writing. You can stamp on that, write on that, glue on that. The other side was the same. So I just took a pretty piece of scrapbook paper with these pretty faint stripes, and I glued that into place, and then I put masking tape down the center so that that page didn't want to stand up as much as it was doing. And just some stained paper there. That's a pretty butterfly image. That came from a card. I probably bought it at a thrift store. I don't remember where I got it, but I took it apart and just put that there as a flip out page. More old wallpaper and more plain paper. There's the other half of that book page. And then I love this. So this doily, I stained it with some Tim Holtz Distress ink, but then I went back, and I don't often use this because when I'm trying to watercolor paint something like faces, the shimmery stuff just feels like it gets in my way a lot of the time. But I decided to take some of the really light pink, and this is from Michaels, by the way. This is a really inexpensive Michaels brand paint set. I took some of that very pale pink and went back over the whole thing with a wet paintbrush in that paint, and it almost looks like it has glitter on it. I love that shimmery distressed look. So I wanted to share that tip. That is an ink stamp, and there was way too much water in it, but I love the effect. And then when these pages stuck together, we ended up with the shimmery effect all over that. Beautiful wallpaper. There's another book page, and there's the other part of that print. Now it had a tear in it. I put masking tape over that, and let's see, it's reinforced again in the center, and I glued an image down here to just kind of reinforce it a little bit. It seems pretty sturdy, but I know it's old. It's very beautiful. And then just some blank paper, more wallpaper, music paper. That tiny little piece, that is the other half of this. I didn't want to interfere with this image with the little children there. But the name of that is Benediction, and it's a painting from 1740. It is in the Louvre, and I love that little design. That's that book page with the geese on it. More wallpaper, and there's just a pretty card that you can write in. And the music paper, I put some masking tape on that. And there's the other half of that book page, the Hat Maker Shop. Here is just a little tag that I stamped with a stamp that says Paris. Now this is interesting. I recently came across 6 of these cards. I wish I had all 12. It says on the back that these are from the Virginia Slims collection. So I bet these are from the 70s, maybe the 80s. Probably the 80s with this Victorian sort of princess look. It says, so the 12 Avenues of Bliss, Avenue 5, the 5th Avenue of Bliss traverses the cliffs of comfort. It's the pleasure of the womanly nature to provide comfort and solace to the dampened manly spirit. And I think it's just so ironic that all of these cards seem to be focused on how women should be taking care of their men. And yet, you know, one of the things about Virginia Slims was just for women to be rebellious and have their own brand of cigarettes and not be so dependent on men. So it could be sort of tongue-in-cheek. This is just a pretty piece of paper I put in that you can write on. And then there's just a beautiful fabric flower that I took apart and then stitched it there. I love this, and I'm trying to remember who sent me this. So many names are coming to mind. I'm not going to guess. I think this came in some happy mail though, and I think I know where it came from, but thank you so much. I appreciate everything so very much. Tiny little teapot and a teacup. right there with a safety pin. Now this beautiful pocket, I do want to tell you about that. Recently when I was shopping for fabric, I came across a gorgeous fabric sample. In fact, I have to show you. Look how gorgeous that is. White linen ink, best in luxury bed linens, table linens, and home accessories. So it had these 3 beautiful pieces of this trim, and I just think it's so beautiful. I felt so lucky to find that. I don't always find things like that. But I used a piece and folded it in half to sturdy this up and to make sure you had a smooth edge at the top. So that's where the pocket came from. I did want to say that. And then there is my stamp. And of course, my style is a little bit messy. I am careful. I want everything to be stitched so that it lasts a long time. But I also want you to feel like your journal is something you can work in. Don't be afraid to make repairs. Don't be afraid to change things. Don't be afraid to cut strings. If you decide that you want to add a tie in some way, just put one on each end. I just think all of my journals feel like living things to me because I keep adding to them. You know, if something tears, I tape it, and it's just a sign of life. Life is so short, and we shouldn't be afraid to journal, to change things, to just love things, and to make things really our own. So this is currently available. I have another kit coming up right after this, or in the next couple of hours. I have to get it together and make a video, but it's a lot of cat ephemera, and there's some really fun stuff in it. So I will put a link below to this. Thank you so very much for watching. I appreciate all of you so much, and I will be back really soon. Bye for now.